The Union is not just a word. The Union is a symbol. And we, the youth, should learn a lesson from this situation to unite, to make integration a reality.
The African Union Summit was supposed to be ordinary until Ibrahim Traoré took the microphone and called the AU useless. His words went viral, shaking leaders and electrifying millions across the continent of Africa. Why did he say it? What truth is he trying to reveal? And how does it change Africa's future? And what better solutions does he have for a united and successful Africa? Let's find that out. Music, the silence in the Grand AU Conference Hall, was the kind that comes only after something completely unexpected. Delegates who moments earlier were checking their phones and whispering to aides now sat frozen, eyes fixed on the young leader from Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traoré wasn't there to deliver the usual soft promises or politically safe remarks. He came with a message that ripped straight through decades of diplomatic tradition. He accused the African Union of abandoning its most fundamental mission, protecting African nations from the forces tearing them apart. His voice didn't tremble, nor did it rise to theatrical anger. It was steady, sharp, and deliberate, the kind of tone that makes listeners lean forward. He named the crisis: insurgency spreading across the Sahel, foreign influence dictating African economies, and internal divisions weakening collective power, and then did the unthinkable. He called the AU itself useless. The reaction was instant. Some leaders looked visibly uncomfortable. Others stared at their notes as if pretending to read. A few nodded slightly, acknowledging the truth in his words, but unwilling to show support publicly. In one corner, a camera operator zoomed in on Traoré's face, capturing the moment that would soon go viral worldwide. Outside that room, in cities and towns across Africa, the video hit social media like a shockwave. For decades, many Africans have quietly questioned whether the AU truly serves the people or if it exists more as a ceremonial gathering of elites. Traoré had said out loud what so many had whispered for years. It wasn't just the content of his words. It was the way he said them unapologetically, with a focus on action rather than endless debate. Commentators were quick to react. Some praised him as a bold truth-teller, a new kind of African leader unafraid to confront established power structures. Others criticized him as reckless, arguing that tearing down an institution publicly could weaken Africa's voice on the global stage. But for the millions watching online, his speech felt different. It felt like someone was finally speaking for them. Within hours, hashtags supporting Traoré surged. Radio stations discussed it nonstop, and African diaspora communities from Europe to North America held online forums dissecting his every word. Memes, quotes, and TikTok videos framed him as the voice of Africa's youth and compared him to iconic figures like Thomas Sankara and Nkrumah. But this speech wasn't just an emotional outburst. Traoré didn't stop at pointing out failure. He hinted at a bigger idea, a vision for Africa's renewal. That is why this moment was more than just trending content. It was a potential turning point in African politics. And so the question arose, what exactly pushed him to deliver such a blunt message? Was it a reflection of personal frustration? Or is it something deeper? A warning about an Africa at risk of losing control over its destiny. To understand why Ibrahim Traoré risked breaking diplomatic norms with such a bold statement, you have to look at what has been building beneath the surface, not just in Burkina Faso, but across much of Africa. For years, countries in the Sahel have been locked in a fight for survival against militant groups, armed bandits, and powerful smuggling networks. Despite countless meetings and promises from regional and international bodies, the insecurity has only grown worse. In Burkina Faso, attacks on villages, schools, and security forces have displaced over 2 million people. These aren't distant abstract statistics. They are real families living in camps, soldiers fighting on minimal budgets, and communities watching their farmland go to waste. For a country that relies heavily on agriculture and rural trade, this has been devastating. And yet, At high-level continental gatherings, solutions often sound like empty slogans rather than real commitments. The African Union was created to unite African nations and present a strong, coordinated front to the world. But in practice, Traoré sees it as slow to react, bogged down by bureaucracy, and overly cautious in moments of crisis. While African leaders talk of African solutions for African problems, much of the actual security assistance still comes from foreign powers, often with strings attached to Traoré. This is a betrayal of the AU's founding principles. A body meant to defend African sovereignty has, in his view, become comfortable with outsourcing that very responsibility. But his frustration doesn't stop at security. Traoré, like many younger African leaders and activists, is deeply critical of the continent's economic reality. Many African countries still export raw materials at low prices while importing expensive finished goods, an economic structure inherited from colonial times. This imbalance keeps African economies vulnerable and dependent on external markets. Even in West Africa, the CFA franc remains linked to the French treasury, something critics say ties the region to its colonial past. For Traoré, the AU has not done enough to change these fundamentals. He believes it should have been the platform leading a campaign for Africa's economic independence, pushing for industrialization, regional trade integration, and financial systems free of external control. Instead, meetings often end with symbolic statements, but little concrete change. His bluntness at the AU summit was in many ways the culmination of this long-standing frustration, a refusal to stay silent while problems deepen and ordinary Africans pay the price. There's also a generational layer to his anger. Traoré at 36 represents a younger, more impatient wave of leadership. Many young Africans look at institutions like the AU and see structures dominated by older elites who have been in power for decades but delivered little transformation. His speech spoke directly to that audience. Millions of young people who are no longer willing to wait for gradual reforms that never seem to arrive. This helps explain why his message landed so powerfully online. For youth across Africa, his criticism of the AU wasn't just about one summit or one policy. It symbolized their frustrations with a status quo they feel is holding them back. And because Traoré didn't stop at complaining, but pointed toward an alternative vision, he turned what could have been a moment of controversy into one of inspiration. So what exactly is that vision? Let's continue. When Ibrahim Traoré criticized the African Union, he wasn't speaking as an outsider throwing stones. He came armed with proof that change could be built from the ground up, starting within his borders. His approach in Burkina Faso is deliberately designed to break the cycle of dependency that has plagued many African nations for decades. Rather than wait for international donors or complicated continental programs, Traoré is reshaping Burkina Faso with an ambitious $8 billion transformation blueprint that focuses on self-sufficiency and sovereignty. One of the central pillars of this plan is infrastructure renewal. Roads linking rural farming communities to markets are being expanded, reducing the time it takes for food and goods to reach urban centers. This isn't just about transportation. It's about turning disconnected villages into active economic contributors. Energy access is also a major priority with new investments in solar power and microgrids designed to reduce dependence on expensive fuel imports. Another core focus is agriculture and food security. For decades, Burkina Faso has relied heavily on imported food, leaving it vulnerable to price spikes and supply disruptions. Traoré's government is now pouring resources into irrigation systems, locally produced fertilizer, and modern farming techniques to turn Burkina Faso into a net food exporter rather than an importer. Farmers are being offered training in crop diversification and access to new seed varieties designed to withstand changing climate conditions, ensuring that food security becomes a permanent feature rather than a fragile goal. But Traoré's reforms go beyond immediate needs. They target structural change in the economy. His administration is taking control of natural resources, including gold, which is Burkina Faso's most valuable export. By nationalizing gold mines and building the country's first gold refinery, the government aims to stop exporting raw gold at cheap rates only to import refined products at higher prices. Instead, value will be added domestically, creating jobs and increasing state revenue. A strong anti-corruption agenda supports these initiatives. Traoré has moved aggressively against officials accused of siphoning public funds or mismanaging state projects. This campaign is more than just a political statement. It's a way to ensure that development money reaches the intended sectors rather than disappearing into private accounts. The funds reclaimed from corruption cases have been redirected toward building schools, clinics, and agricultural processing facilities, creating visible results for ordinary citizens. Financing this transformation has required difficult decisions. Traoré has deliberately avoided taking loans from the International Monetary Fund and World Bank that come with policy conditions often criticized for limiting local economic control. Instead, Burkina Faso is focusing on domestic financing and innovative partnerships with neighboring countries. State-owned enterprises are being revitalized, and new revenue streams from gold refining to agricultural exports are being earmarked for reinvestment at home rather than servicing foreign debt. All of this reflects a philosophy: show, don't just tell, by demonstrating that a small landlocked country with security challenges can still pursue independent development. Traoré hopes to create a model that other African nations can adapt. His vision is not to lecture the continent, but to lead by example, proving that sovereignty and progress are not mutually exclusive. Yet even with bold reforms at home, Traoré knows Burkina Faso alone cannot break free from all external pressures. That's why his strategy extends beyond national borders to building new alliances that challenge old power dynamics and foster collective strength. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos. Now, the success of any national reform program, no matter how ambitious, faces limits when surrounded by unstable neighbors and external pressures. Traoré understood this reality early on. That's why even as he poured energy into Burkina Faso's internal transformation, he moved to create something bigger, a regional alliance built on sovereignty and shared strength. This vision gave birth to the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, bringing together Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. All three countries share common challenges: violent insurgencies, economic fragility, and a long history of dependence on former colonial powers for security. They also share something else: leadership willing to take controversial steps to assert independence, even if it means cutting ties with foreign military missions and facing political backlash from powerful global actors. The AES isn't just about signing agreements and taking photos for international headlines. Its agenda is deeply strategic. First, it focuses on joint defense. Rather than rely on foreign troops to handle security threats, the member states are pooling resources, training soldiers under a common doctrine, and establishing shared intelligence frameworks. This is about regaining control of security decisions that for years have been dictated from outside capitals. By sharing operational bases and coordinating border patrols, these nations are building a regional shield designed by and for Africans. Second, it aims to build economic resilience through integration. For decades, trade in the Sahel has been stifled by weak infrastructure and competing national regulations. The AES plans to harmonize trade policies, create regional value chains, and invest collectively in cross-border infrastructure. This includes shared energy grids, roads connecting agricultural hubs, and joint industrial projects. The logic is simple. When three neighboring economies function like one, they can scale production, reduce import dependency, and increase bargaining power in global markets. Third, it is rewriting political dynamics. In global negotiations, individual Sahelian countries often struggle to resist unfavorable trade terms or defend their sovereignty against external interference. By presenting a united front, the AES hopes to shift the balance of power. Whether it's in mining contracts, security deals, or agricultural exports, these states are no longer negotiating alone. Instead, they are positioning themselves as part of a bloc that speaks with one voice and demands fairer treatment. Traoré sees this regional cooperation as the seat of something much larger, a move toward Pan-African integration. In speeches following the AU summit, he's talked about erasing colonial-era borders, creating a continental currency often dubbed Afro money, and issuing a single African passport to allow free movement of people, goods, and ideas. These aren't entirely new ideas. Leaders like Ibrahim Traoré and Muammar Gaddafi champion similar visions. But Traoré's approach is more grounded in immediate realities. Start small, prove it works, then scale up. The significance of the AES isn't just institutional, it's symbolic. It shows that African countries, when dissatisfied with existing structures, can build their own. For many young Africans watching this unfold online, the alliance is evidence that unity doesn't have to be a dream locked in political speeches. It can begin with concrete steps among neighbors. But with such bold moves come questions and skepticism. Will these alliances hold under pressure? Can they deliver measurable improvements to people's lives? While these questions were already out, why are they being talked about after Traoré's speech? The timing also mattered. Africa is at a crossroads, facing both external pressures and internal debates about its future direction. Rising youth populations are demanding faster reforms, while old governance models struggle to adapt to new economic realities. Traoré's speech tapped directly into this tension. It became a symbol not just of frustration, but of possibility. The debates didn't stop at authenticity. They evolved into a larger conversation. What kind of Africa do we want? Should it continue with the incremental, cautious diplomacy of old or pivot toward bold, sometimes confrontational leadership willing to reject dependency and chart an independent path? For many young Africans, especially those active online, the answer was clear. They want leaders unafraid to challenge the status quo. Leaders who combine vision with action. Even African diaspora communities joined the conversation. From student groups in Paris to professional networks in Washington and London, people began organizing forums and discussions. For them, the viral moment was more than entertainment. It was a catalyst for civic engagement and political debate. Ultimately, it tells us one thing. Africa is hungry for a different kind of leadership. Leaders who, like Traoré, are willing to speak uncomfortable truths, propose independent solutions, and connect national transformation with continental unity. Is Africa finally ready to take full control of its future? Do leaders like Ibrahim Traoré represent the change people have been waiting for? Let us know in the comments section. Will bold words turn into bold action or fade like so many promises before? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.